Hello, everyone. A warm welcome to everyone. We are truly grateful that all of you are able to join us. And this is really, we want to celebrate the World Water Day. And this is brought to you by Community Pure Water and Inc. So let me tell a few things about water to you, why this day is important. We take it so for granted, the fact that we can drink a glass of clean water, right? But as safe water is a rare commodity in many, many, many places, and it is the backbone of public health. If we can fix this, we can fix many, many, many diseases in this world. So let me give you a few statistics. 2.2 billion people around the world still lack access to safe drinking water. That is almost a third of this world. More than 80% of these households, only women and girls are responsible for water collection. In India alone, okay, it's estimated that waterborne diseases have an economic burden of approximately $600 million a year. And less than 50% of the population of India has access to clean drinking water. Water is essential, not only for the health, but also for poverty reduction, women empowerment, food security, human rights, ecosystems, education, and you name it. And it is well-known fact, the future wars are going to be not on oil, but on water. So hence, the dire need to address the problem of accessibility of clean drinking water for the whole world, not just for these 2.2 billion people who don't have it, is extremely important, because when there is a problem, when there are wars about water, it'll affect all of us. So the core focus of World Water Day is for us to align to the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, which aim to achieve water and sanitation for all by 2030. Now, there are other UN goals of women's empowerment, financial equality, and as you can see, the water contributes to them as well. So just sticking to water, how do we get to clean water for everybody by 2030? How are we going to do that? So we're going to answer these questions through our discussions today with some of the people who are truly not just experts, but people who have been working on this for many years. I'm Lakshmi Pratury. I'm the founder and CEO of Inc. Talks. I've always believed that empowering and enabling communities by giving them a voice and by connecting them to people in positions of power can help them. This is truly about the power of telling your story and networking. So that's the reason why we have Inc., which stands for Innovation and Knowledge, which is a platform for storytelling. And that's why we have set up a specialized vertical called Inc. Studio, which is an idea accelerator, where we partner with people who are already doing amazing things and see how we can accelerate their journeys. So at Inc., we are truly delighted to partner with Community Pure Water on their journey for providing safe water to everyone in rural India. It's an ambitious goal, it's an outrageous goal, and we are going at it. People say that little drops of water make an ocean. We believe in that, but we also believe that every drop of water has an ocean in itself. So every bit of work we do, every contribution we make, every idea we generate will contribute to solving the overall problem. So I will now introduce the people who are going to be joining me. There are going to be 3 people who are going to be joining me. First, let me introduce to you Ravi Reddy, the founder of Community Pure Water. Ravi is an accomplished entrepreneur and an investor across several asset classes through private investments, etc. The thing about Ravi, he's someone I've been seeing in the news, somebody I've been following, and somebody I've been a friend for a long time. And what I have observed with Ravi is that whatever he takes on, he's at it for a long time. He's not afraid to take on big problems, whether it's in the for-profit side. He was in Think Capital. He co-founded Think Systems, and it's a highly successful enterprise solution software company, which is sold to i2 Technologies, which itself became a huge company. And so in the for-profit side, he has taken things on that are still being solved today, and he's a key player there. And for over 3 decades, he's had a great track record as a value-add investor, and also as a supporter of young founders for everything from biotech research, clean energy, all the way to social ventures. He's been really involved in establishing microcredit as a discipline in India, and now he has taken on water, and he's been at it for the last 10 years. So today, Community Pure Water operates in over 200 villages, services more than 200 schools, providing safe water to over 600,000 people and 100,000 underprivileged children. I mean, these are all approximate numbers. You can only imagine the ripple effect it has on others who have been inspired by something like this and set up other organizations. So Ravi's work has influenced millions of people in India. So Ravi, welcome. And
thank you, Lakshmi.
Yeah, and our next speaker is Sumeet Rawla, who's the Chief Philanthropy Officer, and it's not exaggeration to say she's the soul of Community Pure Water in driving it across donors and also inspiring the team in India at the same time. She comes from a illustrious past of being a very successful corporate and venture successful individual and a team player. She's forged alliances with Oracle, HP, Dell, etc. for Admetrics, and she also serves on the boards of Video Volunteers, Solar Village Project, etc. Since 2018, she's worked on Community Pure Water to bring a sense of long-term professionalism to it, and also creating a very strong donor community, which aligns with Community Pure Water in much more deeper way than just writing a check. And that so welcome, Sumeet, for joining us. And as I said, one of the things that's very important for a venture like this are the partners, are the donors, are the people who believe in it. So our next speaker is Bill Beecher. Bill is on the board of advisors and board of directors, and he advises multiple SaaS software and services companies. He's a venture partner and advisor of Gratitude Railroad, an impact investment firm focused on environmental and socially beneficial companies. He's been the president of Star Technologies, price management software company, and executive vice president of I2 Technologies, and so on and so forth. And before I2, Bill worked on a variety of operational finance roles in the industry and practiced law. So he's all heart, but also all process. So if he's involved in something like CPW, you know that everything is in place. So he's a graduate of the University of Albany and Cornell Law School. And Ravi has known Bill for a long time in various capacities. Bill, welcome. And maybe Ravi, you can add a couple of sentences about Bill.
Thank you, Lakshmi. I know that's a long introduction to each of us, but at the end of the day, I feel that when we come together for a really common purpose, the one thing that I felt always about Bill, that he's a person of high integrity, and he always asks the right questions in a very deep way, which kind of makes you to stop and think about what we are doing. So I'm always reaching out to Bill in any of my endeavors, and clearly this one was close to not just my heart, but he identified it with himself, visiting India several times over the years. And he says, hey, Ravi, let's just go and figure out what exactly is happening on the ground. And at some point, he will share some of his experiences when he was visiting with me for Community Pure Water.
Yeah. So let me start.
Lakshmi, Ravi, thank you for the intro.
Sure. Thanks, Bill. So let me start off on, I gave some statistics, etc. earlier, but Ravi and Sumit, in your own words, you've been on the ground for over a decade, and Sumit, you for quite a few years. So tell us a little bit about what are the major problems of safe drinking water in India that you have observed and your insights into it.
So, Lakshmi, I'm going to start with my personal experience around water. As much as I have grown up in a large city in India, every summer we used to go to our native village and spend the summers there. So firsthand, I witnessed how challenging and difficult for the communities there and families trying to get, kind of portable water for their daily use. And the morning starts off, focused on that. And it takes them several hours. And the quality of the water that I always used to dread drinking it, and even the food which is cooked never tasted, and it was always a challenge. And my grandmother used to boil the water, but still, as kids, I hated that aspect of it. As much as I enjoyed being in the village for the summer, but the quality of the water was terrible. And steadily every year, I felt that it was getting worse for two things. One is the wells were getting dry, and then they had to go further out, and the quality was getting worse every year. So that is my personal experience around water. And growing up in the city, we never really had those issues in those days anyway.
How about Sumit? How about you? What do you see?
Extending from Ravi's, into opening into this problem that he saw personally, I started looking at this when talking to Ravi about it. And when I looked at the numbers, I found they're totally shocking. First, there's water insecurity all over the world. We all know that. But the prospect of India facing water insecurity and no water, leave alone potable water, is looming over us. 2050 is forecast as the year when India will run out of totally out of water. What we're looking at in terms of, yes, there's water availability. A lot of investments have gone in over the past several years through governments, through World Banks and various investments to provide water availability closer to rural residences and communities. That means a lot of bore wells, a lot of dependence on groundwater. And as we go deeper and deeper, we are picking up all the pollutants that the water table has collected across its life, right? India is ranked by the UN as 122 out of 124 nations in the quality of water for drinking, which is, I think, shameful. Mm-hmm. So that's where we are today in terms of the water quality. Yeah. And it's not simply diarrhea, cholera, pathogens. We also have, a lot of chemicals that are flowing into our water from excessive use of fertilizers and pesticides, from, uncontrolled industrial waste. All of that flows into our surface water, it flows into our groundwater, and that's what we're pulling up and serving our populations.
Yeah. So let me ask about, we all see problems in this world, right? And there's many. But how did you say, I'm going to do something about it? So Ravi, how did Community Pure Water happen? Why did you pick this and how did you pick it? And then Sumit, you can add a little bit about why this as an issue appeals to you. Go ahead, Ravi.
So Lakshmi, it's probably simple in one way if I explain it. My both my grandfathers from the paternal side and maternal side, they were farmers. And my dad was a civil engineer. So when I used to visit and spend time with my grandparents during summers, while I enjoyed being there, I also saw the struggle, of the households, grandmothers constantly, thinking, worrying about fetching water from the well, from the region that we come from, which is the Nalgonda district in Telangana, is one of the most affected with fluoride. And in those days, I didn't understand it. It just tasted bad, and that's all I remember. But later on, I was looking at it and said, why is our district suffering this fluorosis amongst the population? So, and then my dad actually was an executive at the city waterworks for many years. So to me, I said, this is a problem we need to solve, not just in a local way, but the entire region was suffering from the same or similar issues. Other than just fluoride, there were other toxins. So to me, picking water was a natural selection for me in that sense, because I have the history of the family as well as my personal experience. Then beyond that, what my dad had done quite a bit of community service for his village after he retired. So from that standpoint, rather than picking multiple things that he did, like he did sanitation, he did drainage system for the village, I felt that I want to pick one and then scale that, so that way more and more people can benefit from the Community Pure Water initiative.
How about you, Sumeet? What did you see as how this can change the world in a way you want to be part of?
When you look at what's, I just mentioned India's ranking, and delving deeper into that, the numbers are stupendous. There are 38 million people that suffer from waterborne diseases. And it's not simply what we normally think about as a diarrhea or a cholera, which is a communicable disease, and it can be controlled by by ultraviolet cleaning. But there are diseases that are highly debilitating, like cancer, which you get from all the nitrates and all the pesticides, etc., in the water that's coming up from the ground. There are also fluorides, Ravi mentioned, and the fluoride causes fluorosis, which is an extremely debilitating disease. You become handicapped, literally. You lose your skeletal structure. So he's put it very simply, but it's really a scary kind of disease, and it grows over time. It's not a one day. So day one, you consume water that's polluted, you get diarrhea, and 500 million people die. 500 million people across the world are dying of cholera. This has been controlled. But the diseases like fluorosis, diseases like cancer, and arsenic poisoning from water sources need a longer and a more focused solution that is more specific to cleaning all of this in the water. So the simple thing is clean the water and provide the communities that are suffering with pure water. When you look at that, it seems very straightforward. All of us are using these purification systems in our homes, in cities. Can this be applied on a larger scale at a community level? Yes. So that's kind of how I look at this, that communities can be can access these solutions to prevent these long-term diseases. And the timeliness of these interventions is critical.
So maybe Ravi, and you can talk a little bit about CPW journey so far. Tell us about what does CPW do when you go into a village? What's the first thing we do? What is the second thing we do? And then Sumeet, then you can talk about how many villages, what is some of the impact we had, etc. So Ravi, take us through, from the time we enter a village, what is it that CPW does?
So Lakshmi, one of the first things we did when we wanted to address this issue and figure out how best that we can deliver and providing access to pure and clean water to the rural communities, to understand what their current challenges are, then how do we put a program in place in such a way that it is always going to be there for them on a more permanent basis and with minimal time from them. So what we do is we first survey the village and engage the leadership of the village in developing a very solid commitment from both sides, from their side and from our side. And then from that point, we go ahead and install the plant, the purification plant, center we call it. And we train a local person to operate it. And we train them. And then we support them with our technicians who are always, very much part of this on a daily basis and a weekly basis and a month. So that's really the start of the whole thing. So we ran a pilot initially for the first year, and then we learned a few things that we needed to do differently so that it's much more accessible. And then we locate the center in such a way that the maximum time for each household, each family member would be not more than 5 to 10 minutes total time to fetch it.
Yeah.
And of course, the source being that groundwater, we got to test that. And then we got to figure out how best to, technically solve it with our technology.
Yeah. So Sumeet, you want to tell us in the last 10 years, like how many centers, states, what has happened so far?
You already brought up our number. 200 villages are currently operating. But in the lifetime of our operations, we've actually installed about 350 plus villages with pure water processing centers. And beyond all of this, it's 350 plus villages and schools. It reaches every village has probably 500 households, so you can multiply how many people are being provided access. But in order to provide this in a more sustainable way, in a continuous availability of water to the populations that we serve, we've also built out a whole supply chain system. We built out a hub and spoke model for our warehouses and workshops, where we repair and refurbish the equipment. And we ensure business continuity. We ensure the quality is tested regularly. And we have a call center where there are operators from each village can call in for troubleshooting. Our service levels are 95% uptime, which any manufacturer will say, wow. And the processes that Ravi and our execution team have put in place are world-class in terms of an optimized standard operating process. So that's one side of the coin. The other side of the coin is how did we get here to 350, right? Yeah. Because like Ravi mentioned, he started with his own, idea and his funding. The seed funding came from Ravi's family foundation, RBR Foundation, first few years. And when the success of the operations village to village, the neighboring village saw it, the cousins saw it, they said, please put it in my village. So we started getting requests to please come and do the similar thing, intervention in my village. So slowly more money needed to be pulled in. And I think the first 3-4 years were probably a lot of personal funding from individuals. And then the next thing we saw was that local community leaders, like district commissioners, provincial commissioners, there's one very interesting example is the superintendent of police of Nalgonda district. He came, he said, this is my Police Welfare Association fund, and I'm going to ask you to put 18 water purification centers in my district. So that's how by word of mouth we grew. Industrialists, India Cements was operating in that region. They said, my workers live here. They suffer from this poor water quality. They're always sick. I will put my, philanthropic funds behind you. You come do this for us. So that's how we spread and grew organically in the first few years. And as this expansion happened, it's very organic. We've not done a lot of marketing, and this is probably the first time we're doing something out there. But we've got much larger donors in our network now. Grassroots NGOs work with us, example, via financial inclusion. They've been our donor over the last 7-8 years, and they've committed to every single year for a longer term in the future. We have FMC Corporation. Their corporate CSR has entered a long-term partnership with us. We have annual funding from them. So we have a very good baseline of, yes, we have funds to go further, to expand. They've helped us reach new states. We started in Telangana, where we belong, in Andhra, which is now a separate state. And then along with FMC, we were able to expand our reach to Uttar Pradesh, to Punjab. And now we're looking at adding Gujarat, Maharashtra. So the other interesting one is from your hometown, Thermo Fisher Scientific. They've started last year, and this year we hope to expand their commitment to CPW. So this is how we've kind of grown. Now we are at an inflection point.
Right. Yeah, and I think, a decade into it with so much results to show. And Bill, I'd love for your feedback on continuing on the conversation. What took you to CPW, apart from personal relationships, etc.? When you actually write a check as a philanthropist, there are many things you look at. So tell us a little bit about why you picked CPW and what is your insight into it?
Sure. And there are multiple things you consider, but I first visited India, I was just thinking about 35 years ago. And I was there for a while. I traveled and saw remote areas as well as the big cities. And I got a sense of India and what the challenges of India were back then. And I also developed a real love for the country, as did my family. In fact, my son lived in India for 6 months. And so we have a passion for the country. I have many friends from India. I've worked in the software business. And I probably traveled India on between business and personal 20 to 30 times over my life. So there's a connection. Early on in my career, I actually got into the renewable energy business, solar. And one of the reasons I did that, I thought it was a good business opportunity, but I also thought at that point, solar was less about building big solar farms in developed countries and more about trying to get remote villages electrified, which is actually a parallel to bringing clean water to a remote village. Even today, there are roughly 2 billion, almost the same number as people without clean water access. There are roughly 2 billion people that live still off the grid. And 1 billion people who don't have regular access to electricity. So it's a similar sort of issue, and it's been on my mind. These kind of issues have been on my mind a long time. And then Ravi and my paths crossed in Hyderabad about 6 or 7 years ago. I was in India, and I was very interested in what he was doing with CPW. And I was also interested to go out and see some villages. I like seeing things with my own eyes. It's just always the best way to learn something, to do it empirically. And so we took a trip into outside of Hyderabad, and we visited 3 villages that were using the CPW systems. It was fascinating. I learned a ton about what it takes to do this. And one of the things that I learned mostly is it's kind of hard enough to set one of these systems up initially, and to find the village, to find the local support, to find the right place to put it, to make sure the groundwater situation is suitable, all those logistics and raising the capital. But actually what I learned, the biggest issue was keeping these things going, the maintenance issue. How do you operate these things successfully so they just don't wind up being a broken down set of equipment sometime after you install it? And Ravi and his team had come up with a strong methodology and a sustainable operation to achieve that. Because one of the things I saw in my work as well as my travels is it's really, I wouldn't say, it's an overstatement to say it's easy, but it's easier to get something done. It's harder to stick with it and sustain it. That's always a challenge in any endeavor. So I was very impressed with it. And actually an example, I witnessed firsthand a great example of the importance of keeping these systems going. We pulled up to a village whose name I do not recall, in a very remote place. I was in a car with Ravi, a couple other people, and there was a crowd of people waiting for us, and they did not look very happy. In fact, they were very, very agitated. And the reason they were agitated had nothing to do with the quality of the water. The water was fine, but the village was subject to rolling blackouts. And every time there was a rolling blackout, it messed up the IT system, which kind of ran the water dispensary. And so it was a tech problem. It was a typical IT tech problem that had to be sorted out to get the benefit to people, which was a great example to me of, in a mini way, in a fixable way. It wasn't a broken down set of equipment on the roadside, but it was a way of seeing that you got to keep these things running, keep the water flowing, and make people healthy and satisfied. So I was impressed. I actually was involved for a bit, helping on the plans of CPW and how to build their operation in India. Not that I'm an expert in that, I'm not. And I wanted to contribute. I want to be part of it. It makes a difference. Ravi, Sumeet, and the rest of that team are going to have 1 million people getting clean water who weren't beforehand. That is an amazing contribution to the health and well-being of the world. So that's kind of how I've thought about it. Lakshmi, you're on mute.
Sorry. That's fantastic. Bill, that you really laid out from your point of view, what we need to see. There is a community involvement, there is a technology need, there is a whole ecosystem you need to build, and there is a long-term commitment. We saw all that. And, to continue on that, I'd love to hear from all of you as to what impact have you seen in local communities in terms of, is there an increase in the number of kids enrolled in schools or etc. And Bill, from your point of view, just from your visit, you talked about how sometimes the problems are not just the equipment, many other things. After Ravi and Sumeet's comments, maybe you can talk a little bit about when you left, what is the impression you took with you about how the community felt about CPW? So Ravi and Sumeet want to give us some inputs on what changes over the 10 years, now that we have time to look at, what are some of the things you've seen change?
Sure. Lakshmi, by the way, before we get into it, one of the interesting learnings from that trip that Bill just mentioned clearly was that this was the early days and early stage of trying out this anytime water dispensing system, where we issued these cards, like a credit card system, where the individual would show up and then use that to automatically dispense like 15-liter hours of water. So these are like a prepaid type cards. So when the blackout happened, the system, was not resetting it. So obviously that's what was going on. But today, I mean, obviously, as soon as we understood
Ravi, software people just can't get it right. It just, it's just one of those things. Buggy software.
So we now have a backup thing automatically with a battery backup in such a way that it automatically resets now. I mean, when I said now, it's been a few years now. So that was a kind of I mean, I know it was a unique situation where Bill just happened to be there at the right time, witnessing it. But at the same time, for our guys, was very stressful because here's Bill and Ravi showing up at this village, and then we had a crowd of villagers there. I think there were like 25 of them waiting for us to show up and complain about it. But it also shows that the community was very engaged, and they were very happy having those dispensers in their village because it gave them a lot of convenience. And that's, again, goes to something that we, right from the very inception, the three basic things that we wanted to focus our solution was to make it accessible, which means very close to their households. Then available, which is essentially we want it to be 24/7, 365, regardless whether the operator is physically there or not. And then affordable, because many of these villagers cannot afford to pay, like $1 a bottle. So we had to make it super affordable. So we were successful in delivering that at like fraction of a penny per liter. So that's really the key thing there in terms of impact.
Also, Ravi, I just want to say that it's not that no matter what we do, there will always be problems. It's not that you can do something that doesn't have a problem, but how you fix it and how you correct it. And that's what is exciting about it. Yes, there's a problem, but now you have a long-term fix, not just for that one village. I mean, anywhere.
Sure. No, but the commitment goes to every village, right? It's correct. Like multiplied now, as Sumeet had mentioned, we have installed over 350 centers, and we actively, manage and maintain over 200 on a daily basis. And over a period of time, many villages have essentially we're able to manage it themselves. So we handed it over after 5, 7, 8, years. But some villages, in fact, many villages prefer our technicians and our CPW team to handle it for them because it's much more not just being technically competent, but also it's less headache for them to do it. And some villages are more entrepreneurial, and some are saying, no, we'd rather have you guys do it. So it's a very, very engaged situation between the CPW and the community.
Mm-hmm. Great. So continue. So what are some of the impacts you saw? Sumeet, you want to talk about? What have you seen in the last few years?
As we were discussing in the prior segments, that these are all the diseases and issues caused by. So disease causes not just the illness, but it increases your healthcare cost for a family. Mm-hmm. It requires one person is ill, that person is not in the workforce or not in school. It requires another person to be a caregiver. So a lot of the household incomes have been diverted to medical care and all of that. besides the women going to fetch water from long distances and not being in the workforce and not being productive. That's the biggest change we have seen, that now when you go to the villages where we have been in operation for over a year, the primary healthcare centers has no rush, no queues. More and more people are able to go back to work. Just 1 year of operation, you can see this. So one of the most remarkable things is the time to impact. This is an intervention that you put in today. At the end of year 1, you can see already the change in the public health levels of that community.
Yeah. And not to mention, probably the enrollment in the schools has gone up or something.
School attendance, because kids are not sick from the seasonal illnesses, besides all the aches and pains of, fluorosis or developing other, diseases that develop over time. Girls are going back to school, which is great. The numbers of girls, because they're not going to fetch water anymore.
Yeah.
When you go to a village where we've been working for the last few years, you walk in and you expect, oh, there'll be, women carrying pots of water on their head. No, it's the men. Across all of our communities, I think the ratio of men collecting water has changed dramatically. There's some communities where it's 80-90% just men fetching water. So women have been freed of all this burden. They don't have to stay home taking care of a sick family member. They don't have to go out fetching water. So their productivity, you mentioned that, $600 million worth of waste and $200 million of productivity hours wasted by women. All that adds up to a huge economic gain, not just to each family, but to the whole community. And it adds up actually to your national GDP, finally. It's a really big vision, if you see. Small interventions making huge impacts. And that's the beauty of this work that we do.
Yeah. So Bill, when you left that village, what did you leave with in terms of what was the memory of how the community was part of this? What impact did you see?
Oh, like Ravi said, the community was activated. But that was giving that example to point out, and you made this point, Lakshmi, systems break. The question is to fix them and keep their uptime high and to stick with it. So time doesn't have to be spent really describing why not having clean water is a problem for 2 billion people in the world. If you grow up in a rich country, you don't think much about it. But for people, it doesn't take a lot of imagination to know all the health and developmental issues that come from that, starting with young children and on. So the question for a donor is how do they want to prioritize that and where they're going to make their donations? Can you really make a difference? And do you trust the people you're working with? And I'm here to say you can trust Ravi and Sumeet and team to use this money efficiently. They're not defraying your contributions with administrative or overhead costs. It's all going into the field to be used to build and maintain these systems. Cost of maintenance also, if I recall correctly, Ravi, is defrayed at the village as well. There is a sharing in it, which I think is positive because it puts skin in the game for everybody. And you can really impact by a modest contribution the lives of thousands and thousands of people. And so to me, it's a very simple equation. You could do good efficiently in a trustworthy way. So go do it.
Yeah. And Ravi, maybe you want to talk a little bit about the numbers. One of the things that's unique about CPW is that the administrative costs are different. So all the donor money goes straight to making a difference. So tell us a little bit about how that works, either one of you.
Sure. So Lakshmi, one fundamental thing that we always felt, even when we were discussing this, is when the admin costs get to a place where it actually takes away the dollars going for the delivering the solution. So we were fortunate in a way that my family foundation, the first foundation charitable trust was set up by my dad, like more than, I guess now 40 years now. And so it's an example of how we think about these things, right? So we want to make sure that none of those costs will be burdened the admin costs. So we fund it through our family foundation for the admin. Like Sumeet is a great example. She's a volunteer. She doesn't get paid for this. And similarly, we have a close friend in India. She looks at the operations from an admin standpoint, and she's a 100% volunteer. By the way, her name is also Lakshmi.
Yes.
So I feel like the
in
Lakshmis
South India, you can't escape Lakshmi.
But we need more Lakshmis.
Yes.
And then my brother, who is a U.S. Army Lieutenant Colonel, back many years ago, is retired and he lives in California. He's one of the best talents in supply chain management. So he made sure that the equipment we select and the spare parts we select and the people we select, the technicians and the operating folks in the field are extremely aligned with our interest. So with that being said, and also our upkeep of like in terms of the equipment performing, we want it to be at least minimum 90% up all the time. So today it's probably 95 to 90. So all these factors go into it. And again, with the 5-6 of us, from the admin side, not, paid and 100% volunteer, it makes it that much more easier. And these are committed souls. So in that sense, so almost close to 100% of the contribution goes directly to set up and maintain these purification centers in every village.
Yeah, great.
Sumeet, you can add more to that.
Yeah.
You said it all.
And I think, I just want to say that, kind of pulling it all together, that, there are some, if we want to make a long-term impact, there are some really key ingredients. The first is really a long-term commitment. You cannot, something like water, things like you can't go in and say, where is my ROI in 1 year? So you really have to be at it, so there's a long-term commitment. The second thing that came across in all this is a whole commitment to an ecosystem. It's not just putting the plan, it's putting the plan, training somebody locally, making sure that technology works in the long term, and supporting them through maintenance and all that kinds of stuff. So there's a long-term commitment, there's an ecosystem commitment. And I want to say the thing that comes across mostly to me that's the most important is the community involvement. So when you have the police force saying, I will give my funds to this, or a local MP saying, I'll give my funds to it, or the local sarpanch saying, I will maintain this. And without that, nothing else will work. You can't be babysitting it 24/7. So I think these are the three things: long-term commitment, and also ecosystem, and also getting that local community involved and making them responsible at the end of the day is really, really amazing. That comes through everything that you're talking about. So I'd love to, go around and Bill and Sumeet and finally Ravi, talk a little bit about where do you see this going? What are some of the things we can accomplish in the future? And what do we need to scale that up today? So just let's talk a little bit about the future plans for CPW.
Sure, Lakshmi. I mean, I can start there. I wish we had 1,000 community pure water organizations out there. No matter how much progress we have made over the last several years, and we are scaling very nicely. We have a lot of committed, very nicely aligned organizations supporting us. And just to kind of mention something, Bill is not just a close friend, but he also is a very committed individual in creating an impact with providing his time, his valuable time in helping us. So he is one of those ideal donors for us, right? So we like to have similar donors come and join us for this. Then the question is the scale, right? Look at just in India, we have close to 600,000 rural communities. It's a drop in the ocean here. I mean, whatever we are doing, impacting is nice, but it'll be wonderful to have multiple organizations, not just hundreds, 1,000 community pure water organizations out there delivering what we are doing here and learn from us. We are happy to have them participate. And that's really what my hope and vision is, to have more of these out there.
Great. And Sumeet, do you want to say, Sumeet, maybe you can give us a little bit of an insight into what does it take to set up something like this? If someone gives X, then you can set up a plan. Just give us some idea of the numbers.
Just at a very small level, very digestible number, $5 goes to give safe water for one individual for that individual's lifetime. It's so simple. And when you go to the top level, when you want to invest in a whole community level solution, which is what we do, the total comes to about anywhere between $12,000 and odd dollars for a single village level water purification center. Everything else in between will help certain components. So that's currently what we're doing. Is our ask is about that level. That's our spend from not just the equipment, but it's the total cost of bringing it live, from doing the surveys to identifying the people, to developing the relationships, to actually sourcing the systems, implementing, installing, commissioning, and operating for the first 2 years. So all of this includes that whole range of systems.
Yeah.
And as we go, as we look at, okay, this is for a village level. When we're looking at, we also do schools. Schools is a smaller system. So at schools, it's about half that investment. Capital investment is less, about $6,000. And this is a one-time investment from a donor, and it continues for a lifetime. It serves forever and ever. As long as people like our like-minded people are supporting this cause, we can continue the service. Smaller donations will contribute in a big way to add up. As you mentioned, it's the little drops of water.
Yeah. I mean, it's amazing.
Dollars, pennies, everything adds up. But the intervention is so small.
Right.
It's nothing significant.
No, I love it because it's the lifetime. I mean, if you say I give $5, it supports somebody for the rest of their life, right? Yes. And it's cost of one cup of coffee, for a day, really. And I think these are the things, if people understand. I mean, I can see how we can have school kids do things to say, hey, each one reach one kind of a thing, and it's really amazing. So Bill, do you want to say anything about what kind of donors you would like to see come in, what kind of support you would like to see come in for CPW?
It is consistent with what I said. Yeah. Ravi, Sumeet, my memory is that I think for 500 villages, you'd be covering, give or take, 1 million people. Isn't that the ratio? So you're assuming about 2,000 or so people per village who.
Yes.
Yeah, and so for the $12,000 that Sumeet just mentioned, you're basically providing clean water for 2,000 people, and don't just think about the profile of a person as some average adult. You're talking about everything from babies who need clean water right up to the elderly. And so the health difference there is huge. And this is literally the difference between people having a healthy life and not. And it goes right to the point for 2,000 people living somewhere. And what I would love to see for CPW is to first get to that milestone of 1 million people, which I remember when Ravi and I were in India was really an exciting milestone. And compared to the overall population of India, it's not a big number, but in any sense, 1 million people is a lot of people. And then you take it from there. So that's what's exciting about this, is you can make a big scalable difference. This is not doing something one person at a time.
Yeah, great. So with that, Ravi, closing thoughts from you about you're someone who started this. And I just want to say one thing is that the success of any organization is in creating a system that doesn't depend on you. And I really have to congratulate you while you and your family has started this. Today it's Sumeet and Bill, and there's many others who run it, and it's not dependent on you at all, actually. And so that's a great, stride to make in the last few years. So any closing thoughts on, apart from many, maybe we can franchise CPW to as many people as they want, but just closing thoughts from you.
Thank you, Lakshmi. I mean, the best part is you're absolutely right. The organization certainly is not dependent upon me today at all. The fundraising, Sumeet has done a remarkable job in building the donor base in a very systematic, good way. So that gives me a lot of pride and, for the fact that she joined me and Community Pure Water. The other team members, I mean, India-based as well as US-based. And now, Lakshmi, you're helping us going to that next level. So my expectation and my wish is that the next goal should be 10 million people are benefiting from our service. Yes. And that's really should be our next goal. And Bill, I mean, when we went, we were maybe not even 200,000 at that time. Now we're getting there. I think we are getting to a million number in the next couple of years. So the goal should be to reach 10 million people. And you're going to help us do that.
Absolutely. And I want to end by saying, I think it's all about, like Sumeet was talking about, all this happened so far in the last 10 years by grassroots support, by family foundations, etc. And imagine if we can tell this story through the help of our viewers about how easy it is to scale, and more people can contribute, even in a small way. We can achieve the magical numbers very, very quickly. And that's what I think we hope to work on, is be able to tell this story in a compelling way, to be able to reach everyone and make sure everyone can be part of it in your own way. This is not a rocket science. You don't need to be an expert on water. You don't need to, dig trenches. You don't need to do anything. Just give up 1 cup of coffee a year, and then you can support a person, so we hope to, do that more. And thank you so much for doing this. And let's all celebrate the World Water Day, first of all, to recognize it, not just as an issue, but as a potential solution. This is not like, oh my God, let's all, worry about it and go to sleep. We can actually do something about it, as we have seen so far. So thank you so much for all your time. And I hope each of you who's listening will support either through CPW or doing something on your own, or set up your own CPW and ask us, we can tell you how to start it, whatever way it is, but just do something about it. Make a small action, because every action counts. So thank you so much for your time. And remember, water is not just the problem of the person who's not getting it. Water is a global problem. It affects each one of us. So let each one of us do something about it. And thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.